Family dinners have never really been my thing, but I showed up anyway. It was Brandon's birthday, his 23rd, to be exact, and my parents had insisted that I come. The venue? A fancy, dimly lit restaurant with overpriced wine and the kind of waiters who smirk when you mispronounce a dish. I sat at the far end of the table, nursing a drink, half listening to the shallow small talk buzzing around me. My parents, Michael and Sophia, sat in their usual places, glowing with pride over their golden boy. Across from them was Brandon's husband, Ethan, staring at his phone like he wished he were anywhere else. Then, my father tapped his glass with a fork, the universal sign that he had something important to say. Everyone turned toward him as he stood up, grinning like he was about to announce something wonderful. "We've decided to take a trip to Europe," he declared. I nodded absently, not particularly interested, until he added, "Point without you, Caitlin." I blinked. Without me? Before I could fully process what he had said, Brandon chimed in, laughing. "Right. It'll be so much fun without all your whining." The table chuckled, one of those awkward, hesitant laughs where people weren't sure if they should be laughing at all. I wasn't even angry. If anything, it was just another reminder that I was always the extra in this family. They had gone on 4 major trips in the past few years, and I'd never been invited. I could have ignored it like I usually did, could have made some excuse about my work schedule and let them believe I was choosing not to come. But not this time. This time, I smiled, leaned back in my chair, and asked, "And what money do you plan to use for this little trip?" My mother frowned. "What do you mean?" I swirled my drink, taking my time before answering. "Oh, just wondering if you realize that Brandon and Ethan already spent all the money you gave them." The laughter at the table died instantly. Brandon's expression hardened. "That's not true." My father's face darkened. "What money are you talking about?" I sighed, ready to lay it all out. "The money you gave them to save for a house? It's gone. They're not saving. They've been blowing through it at clubs and restaurants." Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Michael and Sophia turned to Brandon, then to Ethan, who was suddenly very interested in the tablecloth. My mother's lips parted slightly, as if trying to process my words. Brandon snapped first. "You're lying." His voice was sharp, defensive. "You always do this. You can't stand seeing me happy, so you make up stories to turn mom and dad against me." I shrugged. "Check the accounts yourself. Won't take long to see who's telling the truth." Ethan didn't say a word. He just kept staring at his plate, hoping everyone would forget he was there. Brandon shot him a glare, but he remained silent. And just like that, the dinner exploded into chaos. Michael and Sophia demanded answers. Brandon fired back, furious, throwing blame in every direction. Ethan sat there like a statue. I watched for a moment, sipping my drink, letting it all unfold. It was like years of favoritism, broken promises, and unspoken grudges had finally reached their boiling point. Then, quietly, I set my glass down, stood up, and walked out. No one even noticed I was gone. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Missed calls, unread messages, desperate texts from my parents. "Mom, Caitlin, please call me." "Dad, where are you? We need to talk." I ignored them at first. Last night had been a disaster, but honestly, I didn't feel bad about it. If anything, it felt like justice. Years of being the afterthought, the backup plan, the family member who only got included when it was convenient for them. I was done pretending it didn't bother me. By noon, my mother's persistence won. I picked up her call, expecting anger. Instead, she sounded off. "Caitlin, why didn't you tell us sooner?" I let out a short, dry laugh. "Would you have believed me if I had?" Silence. A long one. Then, quietly, she admitted, "I don't know." It was almost satisfying. Almost. "We checked the accounts," she finally said. "You were right." Of course, I was right. Brandon and Ethan had been draining their savings for months. I'd heard it through mutual friends' stories of expensive nights out, designer shopping sprees, splurging on things they couldn't afford. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but after last night's humiliation, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. "What happens now?" I asked, though I wasn't particularly concerned. My mother sighed. "Your father is furious. He's been arguing with Brandon all morning. Ethan left the apartment early, hasn't come back." I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. "Not my problem." Her voice softened. "Caitlin, I know we haven't always been fair to you, but we want to make things right." That caught me off guard. I didn't know how to respond, so I kept it simple. "Okay." After we hung up, I sat there, letting it sink in. For the first time, my parents actually saw Brandon for who he was. For the first time, I wasn't the villain. That afternoon, my dad called. At first, it was just grumbling about how disappointed he was in Brandon, how Ethan was a freeloader, how stupid they had been to trust them with that money. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "Listen, your mom and I have been talking. We want to make it up to you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? How about you come on a trip with us?" I nearly laughed. "You're serious?" "Yeah, just us. No Brandon." A year ago, I wouldn't have believed it. Now, they were practically inviting me into their world, the one I had spent years watching from the outside. I took a slow breath, trying to sound casual. "I'll think about it. Let us know," Dad said before hanging up. I knew this wasn't over. Brandon wouldn't go down quietly. Ethan was probably already looking for an escape plan, but for the first time in a long time, I had the upper hand, and damn, it felt good. I wasn't expecting to hear from Brandon so soon, but the universe always has a way of proving me wrong. The call came late that evening, just as I was settling into my couch with a glass of wine. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. I picked up, barely getting out a hello before his voice sharp and venomous cut through the line. "You really think you're something, don't you?" I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Brandon, what do you want? You had no right to bring that up in front of Mom and Dad," he hissed. "You ruined everything. Ethan is pissed. My husband might leave me, and Mom and Dad won't stop interrogating me all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." I swirled my wine, letting the silence stretch. I wasn't going to argue. He was right, this was all because of me. But I wasn't the one who spent all the money. I wasn't the one who lied. That was all him. Finally, I said, "Maybe you should have thought about that before draining your accounts," he scoffed. "You think you're better than me?" I laughed. "Brandon, that's the difference between us. I don't have to think it." He let out a frustrated growl before the line went dead. Typical Brandon. Always shifting blame, never taking responsibility. I figured that was the last I'd hear from him for a while. I was wrong. The next day, Mom called again, her voice laced with an urgency I wasn't used to hearing. "Caitlin, can you come over? Things are escalating." I frowned. "Escalating how?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Ethan packed his stuff and left. Brandon is in a bad place right now. He's saying some disturbing things." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to stay out of it, to let Brandon deal with the consequences of his actions. But there was something in my mother's voice, something bordering on desperation. And despite everything, he was still my brother. "I'll be there soon," I said. The moment I stepped into my parents' apartment, I felt the tension thick in the air. Brandon was pacing the living room, his hair a mess, his face blotchy like he'd been crying. My parents sat stiffly on the couch, exhausted. The moment Brandon saw me, his eyes narrowed. "Are you happy now?" he spat. "Josh left because of you." I crossed my arms. "Josh left because he doesn't want to deal with this mess. Don't put that on me. You don't understand anything," he snapped. "You think I'm just some spoiled brat, but do you even know the pressure I've been under? Ethan has been unemployed for almost a year. We didn't tell anyone because we knew you'd judge us. That actually caught me off guard. I had no idea Ethan wasn't working. I kept my face neutral. So instead of asking for help, you blew through all your savings?" Brandon clenched his jaw. "We thought things would turn around. We thought we could handle it, but everything just got worse and worse. And now," his voice cracked, "now I have nothing." For the first time in a long time, I saw him as more than just my spoiled, manipulative brother. I saw him as someone who was drowning. But before I could say anything, he straightened, the anger returning to his face. "And of course, you couldn't wait to kick me while I was down." I exhaled sharply. "That's not what this is about, Brandon. I just wanted Mom and Dad to see the truth." "Yeah?" He let out a hollow laugh. "Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished." Before I could respond, Dad stood up, his voice firm. "Enough." The room went silent. "We've all made mistakes," he continued. "But this fighting isn't helping anyone." He turned to Brandon. "You need to take responsibility for your actions." Then he turned to me. "And Caitlin, we should have been there for you when you lost your job. We weren't. That's on us." His words hung in the air. It was rare for my father to admit he was wrong. For the first time in years, it felt like he was actually trying. A tense silence stretched between all of us before Brandon muttered a low, "Whatever," and stormed off to his old bedroom. I stayed a little longer, talking with my parents about everything that had happened. They seemed determined to fix things with me. And while I appreciated the effort, I knew trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. They'd have to earn it. As I was leaving, my dad stopped me at the door. "Hey, about that trip. We've been looking at some places. We'd really like you to come with us." I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'll think about it. When I got home, I found a text from my grandfather. Grandpa George, proud of you, Caitlin. You deserve better. I hadn't expected it to hit me so hard. For years, he had been the only one who truly saw me. And now, for the first time, it felt like my parents were finally starting to see me too, but I knew it wasn't over. There were still cracks in our family that wouldn't be easy to mend. And as for Brandon, I had a feeling his problems were only just beginning. I didn't expect to hear from Grandpa George so soon, but his call came early the next morning. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that I hadn't heard before. Caitlin, I thought you should know what happened last night. I sat up in bed, already feeling a sense of dread. What did Brandon do this time? Grandpa sighed. He came over late, drunk, angry, said I always took your side, that it was my fault. Mom and Dad turned against him. I rolled my eyes. Of course he did. That's not the worst of it, Grandpa continued, his voice tightening. He tried to threaten me. I froze. Threaten you? What do you mean? He said if I didn't fix things, he'd tell everyone I was losing it, that I was senile and couldn't take care of myself. He wanted control of my finances, Caitlin. He wanted to make it so your parents wouldn't listen to a word I said. A slow, burning rage spread through me. Brandon had always been selfish, manipulative. But this, going after Grandpa, the one person who had always been there for me, this was a new low. What did you do? I asked. Grandpa chuckled, but there was no humor in it. I told him I wouldn't be blackmailed by my own grandson. Then I picked up the phone and called the cops, right in front of him. A slow grin spread across my face. You didn't. I did. And he ran like a coward. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Good. Grandpa's voice softened. Caitlin, I know you've been dealing with this for a long time, but I have to tell you Brandon isn't done. He's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. Be careful. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I will. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The fallout was immediate. By the time Grandpa's story reached my parents, it was the final straw. Mom and Dad cut Brandon off completely. No more money, no more support. No more family dinners where he got to play the golden child. They blocked his number, ignored his messages, and told him he wasn't welcome until he truly took responsibility for what he'd done. He didn't take it well. He tried everything. Angry texts, guilt trips, even showing up at Dad's office demanding to be heard. Nothing worked. Slowly, he started to fade from our lives. Meanwhile, Ethan made his own exit, officially moving out and filing for divorce. I never liked the guy, but even I had to admit he was smart to get out while he still could. Brandon, on the other hand, he was spiraling. 2 months passed before he showed up again. This time, it was at my parents' apartment. I wasn't there, but Mom filled me in over the phone. He just appeared on our doorstep, she said, her voice tired. He looked awful, like he hadn't slept or eaten in weeks. I closed my eyes, already knowing where this was going. What did he want? She hesitated. He said he had nowhere else to go, that he was ready to start over, that he wanted to fix things. I waited, and we told him no. That surprised me. Really? Yes. Your father and I agreed we can't enable him anymore. We told him if he wanted to make things right, he needed to take accountability first. And how did he take that? Mom let out a slow breath. Not well. I could picture it, the anger flashing across his face, the way he'd clench his jaw like a petulant child. He accused us of abandoning him, said we were brainwashed by you and Grandpa. She paused, but we stood our ground. Eventually, he left. For a long time, I didn't say anything. I had spent years feeling like the outsider, watching as my parents bent over backward to accommodate Brandon, to shield him from consequences. Now, they were finally seeing him for who he really was. And yet, part of me still felt something close to pity. What do you think he's going to do now? I asked. I don't know, Mom admitted softly. I just hope he figures things out. There was a long pause before she added, but we're not going to let him hurt this family anymore. For the first time in my life, I actually believed her. A few days later, I heard through a mutual friend that Brandon was staying at a cheap motel on the edge of town. No job, no husband, no family to rely on. He had burned every bridge. And for the first time in his life, he was truly on his own. Months passed, and just like that, Brandon became a ghost. I barely heard anything about him, and neither did my parents. The last I knew, he was still holed up in that dingy motel on the outskirts of town, scraping by on whatever money he had left. Then, one evening, I got a message from an unknown number. Brandon, Caitlin, please. I know I messed up. I'm sorry for everything. I've lost everything. Ethan left me. Mom and Dad won't speak to me. I don't don't have anyone. Can we just talk? I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to believe him. Maybe he had changed. Maybe he really was sorry. But the smarter part of me knew better. I had seen this pattern before. Brandon didn't reach out because he cared. He reached out because he wanted something. I didn't respond. Neither did Mom or Dad when he tried to contact them again. They were done with his games. And so was I. A few weeks later, I heard that Brandon had finally left town. Apparently, he moved to some random city a few hours away, trying to start fresh. No one knew exactly where, and honestly, no one seemed eager to find out. For years, Brandon had been the center of our family, the favorite, the one who got away with everything. Now, it was like he never even existed. And, for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left behind. Things started changing for me in ways I never expected. Mom and Dad made a real effort more than just empty words over the phone. We started spending time together, real time, without Brandon there. The tension that had always sat between us started to fade. We actually talked about my life, my job, things that had nothing to do with my brother. For once, I wasn't just the afterthought. One evening, Dad brought up the trip again. We were thinking of doing that road trip up the coast, he said, stirring his coffee. Just the three of us. I hesitated. For so long, I had convinced myself that I didn't want to be part of this family, that it was easier to stay distant, to keep my walls up. But now, they were actually trying. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to let them. So I smiled and said, yeah, I'd like that. A few months passed, and one day I got a text from Grandpa George. Grandpa, proud of you, Caitlin. You deserve better. That one hit me harder than I expected. For so many years, he had been the only one who saw me, who fought for me. And now, finally, my parents were starting to see me too. The last I heard, Brandon was still trying to rebuild his life. He got a part-time job somewhere, but nothing major. No big comeback story, no redemption arc. Just him, alone, trying to piece together what was left. And honestly, I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't pity him either. He made his choices. Now he had to live with them. As for me, for the first time in years, I wasn't looking at my family from the outside. For the first time, I wasn't the loser. I was just Caitlin, and that was enough. Story 2. Have you ever realized that you were just a background character in your own family? That's been my reality for as long as I can remember. I'm Ethan, and my family is, well, let's just say dysfunctional would be putting it kindly. I grew up in a household where favoritism wasn't just an unspoken rule. It was practically a family tradition. My younger brother, Ryan, was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the afterthought, the kid who just happened to exist. My parents, Mark and Linda, made it clear early on that Ryan was the priority. He was their miracle baby, the one with the bright smile, the effortless charm, the born leader. Meanwhile, I was the quiet, bookish one, the kid who never made much noise and, as a result, was easily ignored. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. But by the time I was in elementary school, the pattern was undeniable. When I got straight A's on my report card, my mom barely glanced at it before tossing it into the kitchen drawer. But when Ryan drew a lopsided stick figure with a sun that looked like an egg yolk, it was framed and put on the fridge like a masterpiece. When I wanted to pick a movie on family night, nope, Ryan got to choose every single time. When I worked my butt off to save up for a bike, only for Ryan to throw a tantrum because he wanted a newer, shinier one, guess who magically got a brand new bike while I was told to share mine? It wasn't just favoritism, it was a hierarchy. Ryan was the prince. I was just there. By the time I was in high school, I stopped trying to get their attention. I kept my head down, worked hard, and focused on one goal: getting out. I had a plan. I was determined to go to a top-tier university and carve out a life for myself, far away from my parents' warped sense of family dynamics. And then, just when I thought I was on the verge of breaking free, they hit me with the ultimate betrayal. I had been accepted into one of the best finance programs in the country, full scholarship. It was my dream school, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But when I excitedly told my parents the news, expecting maybe just maybe some pride or encouragement, my dad barely looked up from his newspaper. "You can't go," he said flatly. I blinked. "What? You'll go to the local college," he continued, as if my future was just another errand he needed to check off his list. I was stunned. Why? I worked for this. I earned this. My mom sighed, already tired of the conversation. Ethan, you know how Ryan struggles in school. It wouldn't be fair if you went off to some fancy college while he had to stay here. There it was. The golden child strikes again. It wasn't about what was best for me. It was about making sure Ryan never felt less than, even if that meant holding me back. For a moment, I felt something crack inside me. The years of neglect, the dismissal of my achievements, the constant reminder that I would never be as important as Ryan, it all boiled over. But instead of arguing, I forced a smile. Okay, fine, I said. I'll stay local, on one condition. My dad raised an eyebrow. What's that? I want to live in the dorms, I said. Get the full college experience. They exchanged a glance, probably thinking I was just being dramatic. But to them, it was a small price to pay to keep me in Ryan's shadow. Fine, my dad agreed, as long as you stay local. And just like that, I had my way out. Because here's the thing, I had no intention of attending the local college. I accepted my scholarship, packed my bags, and moved states away without telling them. To my parents, I was still in town, living in the dorms, attending the college they chose for me. In reality, I was chasing my dreams on my own terms. For the first time in my life, I was free. Of course, I knew the truth would come out eventually. I just didn't expect it to explode the way it did. For the first time in my life, I was doing something for myself. No more bending over backward to make my parents comfortable. No more sacrificing my future so Ryan wouldn't feel bad. I was free. My new school was everything I had dreamed of. The campus was alive, filled with ambitious students, opportunities, and most importantly, people who saw me as me, not as an afterthought. My scholarship covered 70% of the costs, and with the money my dad was unknowingly sending me thinking he was paying for my local tuition, I was able to handle the rest. It was the ultimate irony. After years of making me feel like an outsider in my own home, my parents were now unknowingly funding my escape. I kept up the illusion with minimal effort. A few texts here and there, the occasional sorry, been busy with classes excuse. I even visited home a couple of times during the holidays, making sure to throw in vague comments about campus life and professors being strict. They never questioned it. Honestly, I don't think they even cared enough to. And then, just like that, 2 years flew by. Unlike the 4-year program at the local college, my finance degree only took 2 years. By the time my parents thought I was halfway through school, I was already walking into a 6-figure job. That's right, while Ryan was still struggling to pass basic courses, I had already secured a career. The company I joined had recruiters scouting my university, and after a few interviews, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. It felt surreal. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My life was mine, and no one could take that from me. At least, that's what I thought. Then I got the call. It was my dad. I almost didn't pick up. I had barely spoken to him in months, but curiosity got the best of me. Ethan, he said, his voice more authoritative than usual. You need to come home. I frowned. Why? Ryan's getting married, he announced, as if that information alone should send me rushing back. We need you here for the wedding. I leaned back in my office chair, rubbing my temple. So this was it. After all these years of treating me like I barely existed, suddenly I was needed. Dad, I'm busy, I said flatly. He sighed, clearly annoyed. It's your brother's big day. Family comes first. Family. Funny how that word only seemed to apply when it was convenient for them. I can't make it, I said. That should have been the end of it. But of course, my dad wasn't going to let me off that easily. Ethan, he said, his tone darkening. You owe this family. We've supported you for years. The least you can do is show up for one day. I almost laughed out loud. Supported me? That was rich coming from him. I knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't about family. It was about appearances. My dad didn't want to deal with the embarrassment of having to explain why his other son wasn't at the wedding. That's when he played his trump card. If you don't come, I'm cutting off your tuition payments. For a split second, I considered playing along, dragging this out just to see how far he'd go. But I was tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of pretending. Tired of acting like I still cared about people who had never cared about me. So I decided to drop the bomb. Go ahead, I said, my voice calm. Cut it off. I don't need your money. Silence. Then what? I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Dad, I graduated a year ago. I have a job, a real job. I've been making more money than you for months. I don't need anything from you. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet almost, disoriented. You're lying. Nope. Another pause. Then, suddenly, he snapped. He started yelling about how I had betrayed the family, how I had been ungrateful, how after everything they had done for me, I had the audacity to lie to them. I let him rant. I had spent my whole life listening to them dismiss me. What was one last speech? Then he threw in one last desperate attempt to control me. "The only way we'll forgive you," he said, "is if you come to the wedding. Forgive me? Forgive me?" I finally let out a laugh. Not forced, not bitter, just pure, genuine amusement. "I don't need your forgiveness," I said, "and I'm not coming." And with that, I hung up. It was done. For the first time, I had said no, and it felt amazing. But if I thought that was the end of it, I was so wrong, because my dad wasn't going to let me go that easily. And what happened next? Well, let's just say he found out the hard way that I wasn't bluffing. Hanging up on my dad felt good. Really good. But I knew it wasn't over. I'd spent my whole life being the kid they ignored, the backup character in the Ryan show. The second I stepped out of that role, my parents were bound to lose it. I just didn't realize how bad it would get. The very next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls. My dad, my mom, even Ryan. I didn't bother listening to the voicemails. If they had actually cared about me, they would have picked up the phone years ago. Then, at noon, my phone buzzed again. I let it ring. Then it buzzed again and again. I sighed, finally picking up. "What?" I said. It was my dad, and he was livid. "Ethan," he barked. "What the hell is going on?" I leaned back in my chair. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he scoffed. "Don't play stupid. I just got off the phone with the registrar's office. They have no record of you." Ah, there it was. I had been waiting for this moment, the exact second my dad decided to pull his classic "I'm in control" move and storm into the college he thought I was attending. I bet he walked in there all puffed up, ready to teach me a lesson, only to be told, "Sir, we have no student by that name." Beautiful. I stayed quiet, letting him spiral. He went on, his voice rising. "I paid thousands of dollars. Where the hell has my money been going?" I smirked. "Oh, I don't know, Dad. Maybe you should have asked that before wiring it to me every semester." Silence. Then he snapped. He called me a liar, a manipulator, a disgrace. He ranted about how I had stolen from the family, how I was selfish, how after everything they had done for me, this was how I repaid them. "You're dead to us," he finished. It should have hurt. Maybe if he had said it years ago, it would have. But now, I just felt free. "Okay," I said, my voice calm. "Good luck with the wedding." Then I hung up. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But my parents, they don't let things go that easily. A few days passed, and then they showed up at my apartment. I was in the middle of making dinner when someone started pounding on my door. I already knew who it was. I sighed, wiped my hands on a towel, and opened it. And there they were. My dad, standing stiff like he was about to explode. My mom, arms crossed, looking like she was trying really hard to squeeze out some fake tears. I just stared. "How did you even get my address?" My mom sniffled. "We had to find you, Ethan. We were so worried." I raised an eyebrow. "Worried? You just told me I was dead to you." My dad pushed past me, stepping inside like he owned the place. "Cut the crap," he snapped. "You think you're so smart? You think you don't need us?" I shut the door and turned to face him. "I don't." That shut him up. I folded my arms. "Why are you really here?" That's when my mom finally dropped the act. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, "we need your help." Ah, there it was. I should have known. It wasn't about Ryan. It wasn't about family. It was about money. My dad clenched his jaw, then finally admitted the truth. "We're in trouble," he said, "financially." I just stared. What does that have to do with me? My mom wrung her hands. We need some help covering expenses." I almost laughed. They had spent my entire life treating me like an afterthought. They had forced me into hiding just to chase my dreams. And now, suddenly I was useful? "Let me guess," I said. "Ryan's wedding wiped you out." They flinched. It was worse than that. Turns out, Ryan's fiancée had been running a little scam of her own. Before the wedding, she had convinced my parents and some extended family to invest in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. She took the money and disappeared. No wedding, no refunds. And my parents? They had put everything into it. Savings? Gone. Retirement fund? Gone. Even the house had been used as collateral for a loan. Now, they were drowning in debt. I exhaled sharply. So let me get this straight. You blew all your money on Ryan's wedding and got scammed, and now you want me to bail you out? My dad bristled. That's not. I held up a hand. Let me stop you right there. No. They both stared at me. I met their gaze, my voice firm. I don't owe you anything. You ignored me my entire life. You only cared about Ryan, and now that your perfect son ruined everything, you suddenly remember I exist? My mom opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You never supported me. You never believed in me. And now you want my help? After years of making me feel like I was nothing, I shook my head. Not happening. My dad's face turned red. Ethan, I stepped forward, my voice cold. Get out. My mom tried one last time. We're your parents. No, I said sharply. You're Ryan's parents. I was never part of that equation, so go ask him for help. They had no comeback for that. I held the door open. For the first time in their lives, they had no choice but to leave. And as the door shut behind them, I felt lighter. No guilt. No regret, just relief. I was finally free. But if you think that's where this story ends, well, just wait until you hear what Ryan did next. After my parents left, I figured that was it. They had no power over me anymore. No money to hold over my head. No guilt to weaponize. They needed me. I didn't need them. And that was their problem. But of course, Ryan wasn't going to let it go that easily. 2 days later, there was another knock on my door. I didn't even have to check, I already knew. Still, I opened it, and there he was. Ryan, my golden boy of a brother, standing on my doorstep looking, well, rough. His hair was messy, his face was blotchy, and his usual smugness was gone. He looked desperate. I sighed. What do you want? He gave me this pathetic little smile. Hey, bro, can we talk? I crossed my arms. You have 5 minutes. He nodded quickly and stepped inside. I leaned against the wall, watching him fidget. He looked like a kid who got caught stealing. Finally, he spoke. Listen, man, I messed up. I raised an eyebrow. You messed up? He swallowed hard. Yeah, the wedding, the money, everything. I should have been smarter. No argument there. But I stayed silent, letting him dig his own hole. Ryan exhaled. Mom and Dad are freaking out. They might lose the house. They're blaming me. His voice cracked. And I don't know what to do. I blinked. So? He looked at me, startled. What do you mean, so? I shrugged. That sounds like a you problem. His face fell. Come on, man. I need your help. There it was. The real reason he was here. Not because he missed me. Not because he realized how badly he'd treated me. He just wanted something. Same as always. I sighed. Ryan, let me ask you something. He perked up. Yeah? I stared him down. Did you ever care about me? His mouth opened, but no words came out. I tilted my head. Did you ever think about me? Once, when we were kids, when I was ignored, when I was pushed aside so you could have everything? His silence told me everything I needed to know. I nodded. That's what I thought. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Ethan, that's not. No. I cut him off. It is the point. I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. I spent my entire life being invisible to you, to Mom, to Dad. You never cared until you needed something. And now you're here, pretending like we're brothers just because you're out of options. Ryan clenched his jaw. I am your brother, I scoffed. Really? Then name one time you ever acted like it. Silence. I nodded again. Exactly. He swallowed, his voice barely above a whisper. So that's it? I exhaled. That's it. His face twisted with something regret, anger, maybe both. And then, just like that, the mask slipped. His shoulders squared, and the Ryan I knew, the entitled, spoiled brat, was back. Fine, he snapped. Be a selfish asshole. Just know that when Mom and Dad lose everything, it's your fault. I actually laughed. That's funny, I said, because last time I checked, you were the one who got scammed. His eye twitched. Screw you, Ethan, I smiled. Already did, buddy. That's why I'm not the one begging right now. His face turned red. He opened his mouth to say something, but I was done. I walked to the door and held it open. Bye, Ryan. He glared at me but didn't say another word. And just like that, he was gone. That was the last time I ever saw him. A month later, my parents officially lost the house. They moved into some tiny apartment across town, and from what I heard, Ryan ended up crashing with them. I didn't reach out, and they didn't either. Maybe they finally understood, or maybe they just realized I wasn't going to save them. Either way, I was done. No more being an afterthought, no more being used. I had built a life for myself by myself, and now I was free, and that's the end of it. No dramatic reunion, no heartfelt apologies. Just me, finally moving on. And honestly, that's the best revenge I could have ever asked for.